Hello, welcome to the Daily Bible Podcast. My name is William Hemsworth, and I thank you for joining me for today's show. Well, firstly, I apologize for the delay in today's show and for there being no show yesterday. I'm sorry, I'm recovering from a long road trip, and I think I just overslept. So my apologies. We'll be back on, like I said, I'm on today. We'll be back on tomorrow. But today we're going to start Matthew chapter 13, and we're going to look at verses 1 and 2 today. And Matthew chapter 13 marks the third great discourse of Jesus that Matthew has in his gospel. So this is the third one, and we see that because there's a break. There's a literary break, if you will, between Jesus being in a house and him being asked, being told that Mary and brothers and sisters, which are actually his cousins or step brothers and sisters, are waiting outside for him. And Jesus goes on and answers that, those who do the will of God are my brother, sister, and mother. And that brings us to today. So Matthew chapter 13, verses 1 and 2 say, "On that day Jesus went out of the house and sat down by the sea. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat down. And the whole crowd stood along the shore." So Jesus goes out of the house and he's sitting by the sea. So one thing that is really important in this verse and in other verses in the Gospels is that Jesus took time to be alone. He took time just to be by himself. He took time to pray. He took time to reflect on what was going on. You see, and I'm guilty of this as well, is that we get so busy. We get so busy that we get distracted by what is really important. We get so busy that we make excuses to not pray, to not just be alone and reflect, not only on life, but just on Scripture, on who Christ is, etc. We get so distracted by these things. And I think we could learn a big lesson from Jesus here is that he went out, he sat by the sea. He sat there. He was just relaxing. He was taking time out to relax. How many of us do that? How many of us take time daily to just relax? Like I said, I'm as guilty of this as anyone else. If I'm not busy, I feel like I'm wasting time. But we need to look to Jesus. There's a slogan in the 1990s that said, "What would Jesus do?" Well, Jesus not only worked hard, but he took time. He took time to just relax and refresh himself. We need to do that as well. Then we see in verse 2 that large crowds gathered around him, and Jesus got into a boat and sat down, and the whole crowd stood along the shore. Jesus was a charismatic figure. People wanted to be around him. So he wasn't alone for very long, at least from what we can tell from the Gospels. Nonetheless, he was still alone. So let's take a lesson from Jesus today. Let's take time to be alone. Let's take time to just reflect. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Daily Bible Podcast, and forgive me for the lack of shows over the last couple days. Be back in my home studio tomorrow. God bless you. Thank you for listening.